You're the guy people call when they need a helping hand, moving furniture, unloading a truck. But lately, your shoulder's been acting up, and you're the one who's calling for help. And that's the moment you realize you can no longer shoulder the load.
The Joint and Spine Center is Cincinnati's leading destination for orthopedic care, with a range of surgical and non-surgical treatments. So when a moment has the power to change the rest of your life, go to the one place with the power to change it for the better, the Christ Hospital Health Network. This changes everything.
The Pound This Podcast is brought to you by the Christ Hospital Health Network. This is the Pound This Podcast, episode 719, Weightlifting While Vegan with Zach Crawford.
I want to lose weight, but I don't know how to get started.
What should I meal prep every week?
How do I get those sweet booty gains?
Inspiration for your healthy lifestyle. The Pound This Podcast with Amanda Valentine.
Thank you so much for listening to the Pound This Podcast. I am Amanda Valentine. I'm very excited to chat with the brother of a Pound This guest, of actually one of my very first Pound This guests, and who has been on a ton, is Zach Crawford and his brother, Zach Crawford. Thanks for chatting with me, Zach.
Absolutely.
So, Zeb, who works for New Ethics and has done some bodybuilding, and he's a personal trainer and a nutrition coach, and he's done all this. So I got asked a question about wanting to talk to somebody who lifts heavy weights, lifts and is vegan, and the vegan diet, and being able to get your protein in and recover, and all of these questions. So I asked Zeb, first thing, I'm like, do you know anybody that does this? It's a vegan. He's like, yeah, my brother. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is perfect. So I guess tell me a little bit about your background being vegan and exercise.
Yeah, I would say my wife and I have been vegan for probably almost 5 years now.
Okay.
And then before that, we were vegetarian for about in between 4 and 5. So it's probably been about 10 years or a little more where we haven't eaten meat at all. So I definitely have experience in that. Moving to vegetarian is a lot easier than moving to vegan because you still have all of the dairy options, which is a lot of protein there. But honestly, after the first month of going vegan, once you kind of tracking your food and have an idea of what protein and everything you want, it wasn't any different for us, from moving to vegan to vegetarian. So I think the big thing is, people that are serious about, lifting or working out, running, whether they're trying to lose weight, gain weight, the biggest thing is tracking and kind of determining how much protein you want. I have always been on the lower end. You read a lot of articles online, and you see some crazy stuff out there, like for a male weighing 150 pounds, eat 250 pounds of protein. I'm like, okay, why? Like, what are we doing? So I've successfully built muscle. I'm not huge by any means. I'm not a bodybuilder. I'm not Zeb. But I've successfully built muscle, especially over the last couple of years, doing a mixture of weightlifting and running, while keeping the protein relatively low, in my opinion, for some of the stuff I read out there. So I'm not sure how deep you want to get into that, but
yeah, I mean, definitely. Tell me how do you get all those protein sources, and what does your diet look like, and what does your exercise routine along with that diet look like?
Yeah. I guess exercise routine is the easiest. So I typically lift 2 to 3 times per week, and then I try to run twice a week as well. That changes up in the wintertime. During the summer or warmer months, I end up mowing at least once a week, sometimes twice a week. And I push mow, so I kind of count that as that it takes about 2 hours, a little more to push mow my yard. Which is really good exercise, by the way.
It's a lot of yard.
Yeah. So I tend to do a little bit more cardio, during the warmer months. But I also love running in the cold. So my overall yearly average, I would say, I lift 2 or 3 times a week, and then I run twice a week. And then if there's stuff that I throw in, I might, if I I always take at least one day off a week just for recovery and relaxation, typically on the weekend, especially if we know we're going to have plans, for the majority of the day. If I do end up working 6 days out of the week. Sometimes it's random. Sometimes I run. Sometimes I lift. Sometimes I'll do a lower lifting session or just focus on something specific. So that's I would say my average.
So you lift
routine.
with the lift in the intention of gaining muscle at this point, or gaining muscle in the past?
So I went from, so I would say 2 years ago, I was down to, I'm 6 foot exactly, just so people know. About 2 years ago, I got down to 155 pounds, which is pretty low for a 6 foot male. I was lifting, but I was running a lot. I was running half marathons, and I would go out and do an hour and a half runs, on the weekend, just kind of training for that. I decided to. I wasn't really happy with the way I looked, even though I was lower weight. So I decided to kind of focus in and gain weight on purpose. So upped calories, up protein. I decreased cardio a little bit, increased weightlifting. So I went from 155 to 190 over the course of about a year or a little more. I went slow, on purpose. I didn't want to try and gain a ton of fat during the process. If you've ever heard the term dirty bulk, when people just decide to say, "Hey, screw it, let's do this," and then they realize that they really just got fat and maybe gained a little bit of muscle. So I did it slowly. Right now, currently, I'm at 170. So I've already taken about 20 pounds off of that, and that's been over the last 6 months or so. So yeah, I did it on purpose. Now I'm kind of trying to stay in this 170 region with a good mixture of cardio and weightlifting. But I don't want to lose the strength I gained during that. So I'm lifting much heavier now, less of a focus on lighter weights. I still do that, maybe once a week. But right now I'm just trying to maintain that strength. So I do a lot of the big compound lifts, lift heavy. And then still ensure I get, the macros that I'm looking to get.
Yeah. So what does your diet look like?
So there's the harder part to explain. So obviously vegan, it's much harder to get your protein. I still do protein shakes, whether it's a smoothie or just straight up protein in the morning. I honestly, I say morning. I have switched to, and I think this kind of goes against a little bit of what people think of when they think of people trying to gain weight. I do the intermittent fasting because it works better for me. So I don't have a typical breakfast. So I usually eat between like 12 p.m. and 8 p.m. I've tried both. I went back and forth for both. It just works so much better for me. Again, I've lost weight and gained weight doing intermittent fasting, so I can go as deep into that as as you want. But I at least have one protein shake a day, whether it's at noon or later in the night. For me, sometimes I do both if I don't get enough protein in. But what we focus on, we eat healthy, so we eat a lot of fruits and vegetables. The biggest source of protein outside of a protein shake or smoothie for me is something called seitan. Have you heard of that?
Yes, I've had seitan wings before, and they were amazing.
Yeah, they are. So they're made out of Vital Wheat gluten, which is pretty much almost 100% protein. Pound for pound, it has more protein than some meat does that has a lot of fat in it. You can buy protein at the store, like at Whole Foods or any of those places. It's pretty expensive. So we, and when I say we, I say my wife, because she's a much better cook than I am. We make our own seitan here at home. So like on the weekend, we'll make a batch, and it makes like 4 decent sized, almost like loaves of seitan. It's seasoned a little bit, but you can do whatever you want with it. Just like it's very similar texture to chicken, and it does the same thing in terms of flavoring. So if you want to have Mexican or Asian or just just a little bit of spice on it, you can do whatever you want to it. So typically once a week we make that. It lasts the whole week for both of us, and it's legitimately just like cooking with chicken. Whatever you can think of, you would have with chicken. Pasta, sandwich, whatever you can make with seitan. that's our, outside of protein smoothie, that's my biggest source of protein. I'll have that at least once a day, if not twice. I do eat tofu, but I don't eat it a ton. Maybe once or twice a week I'll have tofu, and there's all sorts of recipes of stuff out there. I'm just not a huge fan of it. I enjoy it for some things, but it's not one where I want it every day. Seitan's always my go-to. There's also tempeh. Tempeh is less probably less known than tofu. But you can do all sorts of stuff with tempeh, and you can buy that more easily in the store. But you can make tempeh, like we make tempeh bacon, so we'll have like a BLT with tempeh, bacon, same seasonings, and all that. So outside of those three, I mean, obviously it gets harder to, those three in like a protein, like a vegan protein, it gets harder to, get large amounts of protein. I'm a huge fan of eating like mixed nuts and things like that. They're high in fat, but it's good fat, and they have protein. Smoothies, any type of I use oats in smoothies. Any type of like regular, like natural peanut butter, or any type of nut butter, almond butter, whatever you want. Still has a good amount of protein once you start adding that in there. So typically, like if I have a smoothie like at noon, which is my breakfast / lunch. If I have a smoothie, I mean, that smoothie, with just the vegan protein powder and oats and nut butter and all that, has like 55 grams of protein, 50 to 55. So that right there is a good chunk. I honestly, I only really aim to get 100 grams of protein a day. Sometimes I get a touch less, sometimes I get a lot more, depending on what we eat. I've had zero issues gaining weight, losing weight, maintaining muscle. So maybe I'm just weird, but there's a lot of people out there that do the same thing I do. I don't enjoy eating a ton of protein. I still like I still like unhealthy food. You can eat really unhealthy as a vegan if you look up stuff online. So just like you mentioned, seitan wings. Seitan's starting to be a lot more popular in restaurants, just because it's so adaptive to what you can do with it. But I aim for 100 grams of protein. I do not, now that I've tracked my food for so long, I don't track it 100% throughout the day. I already know, like when I make a smoothie, I know what the macros are of the smoothie. I know what the macros are of our seitan. So I'm doing a little bit of guessing, but I also make sure, ensure that if I'm, right now I'm just trying to maintain. So I do weigh myself daily, and if I see fluctuation, I know something's off. But after you track your food so long, it becomes habit. You have a pretty good idea of what you're eating. I do pay more close attention to tracking food if I am solely focused on, gaining weight, or more specifically losing weight.
Sorry to interrupt. We'll get back to that conversation here in a second. First, I want to tell you about Sarah and Team Fit With Me. Sarah has been my own personal health coach over the past year and has helped me reach some goals, helped pull me out of some depression, and been a great accountability buddy. So if you're looking for someone to help teach you with nutrition, build out an exercise program, anything that you need on this journey, Sarah and her whole team got you. One-on-one nutrition coaching. Plus, if you're struggling with anything like gut health conditions, thyroid diseases, PCOS, hormonal dysfunction, Sarah can help you through that. Me, I found out I have Hashimoto's disease through some labs I did with Sarah, and then that goes into some of my macro building and what I'm doing. There is a registered dietitian that she has meal plans through, or that are reviewed by a registered dietitian, plus a food relationship coach partner, community support, and Sarah is amazing. She has been on this journey, she's continuing to be on this journey, and she's helping others through it. And right now you can get 10% off month one of all packages, plans, and add-on services when you go to teamfitwithme.com/poundthis, which is in the show notes. So let's get back to the interview. So do you do a lot of like beans and lentils and things like that?
Yeah, we do a decent amount. That's a good call out. We still don't eat a ton. So I mean, like we'll have Mexican and we'll have black beans or whatever with that. But honestly, we really only eat beans maybe once or twice, at least, well, I should say at least once a week, maybe twice a week. Seitan is like our go-to, just because, like, again, you can do anything with it that you can do with meat, you can do with seitan. So it's just so it's so easy. It's honestly it's cheap, to make. There's only, outside of spices, there's only a couple ingredients that you need. So that's our go-to. We can turn that into pretty much anything. So that's I don't get sick of it. So for people that really like chicken or beef or whatever your favorite meat is, seitan's the same for us, since we can pretty much do whatever we want with it.
So have you noticed a difference in your training from when you were eating meat versus being a vegetarian versus being a vegan?
It's been so long, honestly. Like it's kind of hard to tell. I used to be, when I left high school, I was up to 230 pounds. I was not healthy, didn't work out. It just wasn't. I got in a car accident when I was 16. Started ballooning up from there, and while I back then probably thought I was working out or lifting weights or running, it was nothing like it is now. So once I went to college, I kind of I knew I needed to make a change, and that's when I started getting more into running and all that. So that's a nice success story, I guess. Not that I was ginormous, but if you see pictures of me at 230, it's not pretty to look at. But back then I was never focused on macros or anything like that. It was more just those college years, and you're eating unhealthy, you're drinking. Most people drink more in college than they do in their adult life, and that was definitely me. So there just wasn't a focus, but I can say I have no issues with recovery. I think that might be where you're kind of aiming to get with maybe a next question. So I'm 41, so I guess that's the other aspect, to put in this. I'm 41 years old, so I'm not on the younger side anymore. And even with lifting 2 or 3 times a week and running, I don't have any recovery issues. I think a lot of that is eating healthy. Like I said, while we do eat some junk food, there's tons of vegan junk food. Oreos are junk food, or Oreos are vegan.
Yeah.
Those of you that are vegan and you're afraid to go vegan, Oreos are vegan. So there's tons of vegan junk food out there. I think just with our focus of eating healthy, and then just not overdoing it and listening to your body, especially as you get older. In fact, last night, so I work out, I run in the neighborhood, I work out here. So in my house, I have one of the spare bedrooms we've turned into a workout area. So we have like a squat rack and, bench, heavy weights, dumbbells, all sorts of stuff, which makes it super convenient for me. I did the thing where I was going to like LA Fitness and other gyms, and I just didn't, I don't know. I enjoyed like the atmosphere and the different types of machines, but I think, I would drive 15 minutes there, I would drive 15 minutes back, and I'm like, I'm wasting every time I go there, I'm wasting a half hour just driving, and then that's not on top of, if I've had to drive to work or anything like that. So, So I work out here. But I think a good example of that is like, last night I was deadlifting, and I could tell, back was a little weird. And, so I just kind of laid off, and I reduced the weight and tried to change up weights a little bit, last night. I think as you get older, you just have to listen to your body more, and focus on that. Don't overdo it, realize that I'm not, Zeb's age anymore, or 21 anymore, and can kind of do whatever I want. But I don't, with our diet, I don't have any issues with recovery. I do change it up though, like where, I typically don't I typically don't lift weights back-to-back days in a row. So like when I say I lift, 3 times and run twice, I typically alternate days just to kind of give those areas a break, for a day. So I'm cognizant of that and have been for a while.
So what made you both make the decision to go from vegetarian to vegan?
2 main reasons. One, health reasons. So, high blood pressure, cholesterol runs in my family. And, there's a link to that, to specifically to red meat. So I always kind of watched the red meat, consumption when I was younger, focused more on eating like chicken and fish and pork and stuff like that. But I think the other thing too is, we're big into animal welfare. I won't preach, we're not, one thing I do get kind of sick of hearing is, like people that are vegans are always pushy. They always, we don't do that. Like you want to eat meat, Like we don't care. We are very animal friendly. I mean, we have a dog. We're just pet lovers in general. And once we started doing, research on stuff in general, this was, back when we switched to vegetarian, it was more health focused. When we switched to vegan, it was less on health and more on animal welfare. There's tons more again, I'm not going to preach to people that don't want to hear it, but if you want to learn about this stuff, it's out there. It's scary, it's gross. The more you learn about it, the more you're just it gets to you. So at this point, it's still health for health reasons, but it's more for animal welfare and just trying to be an advocate for that. When people ask about it. So,
were you concerned at all moving to vegan that it would affect your exercise routine and how you're fueling your body?
Yeah, I was, because again, vegetarian, it's much easier to hit your macros. Dairy has a ton of protein, so you can throw in whatever, yogurt, cheese. So I was, and when we first switched to vegan, I think there was more of a focus on myself to track and make sure I'm hitting protein. And also, we did a lot of research before we switched to vegan. And anyone that is thinking about doing that, please research first. It is a shock to the system, when you can't eat any dairy. You'd be surprised how much foods contain dairy, even if it's just a small amount. They throw it in everything, whether as a binder or whatever the case may be. So do your research, but but again, like after the first month, once we knew that we could make seitan on our own and do that, and had researched other options. After the first month was hard. I mean, I'm not going to lie, because it's so different. But after the first month, it was no different for us than switching to vegetarian before that.
So has there been like a source that's been helpful for you to find recipes and get some ideas from?
I'm not the cook, so I would defer to my wife on that. I mean, I know she uses Pinterest a lot for ideas, just because there's a lot of vegan stuff she follows on there. I'm not sure what specific seitan recipe she uses or where she got it, because it's been so long at this point. But so I don't, not that I don't look around at things, but or save things like on any news site I look at, like Reddit or whatever you use. I tend to save anything, on there, but she's definitely the cook. I mean, I help her. I help, like I try to. I don't know how much I help, but she's really good at that, and she was instrumental in making that switch to vegan easier. Because if we weren't making our own seitan, if we were buying it or relying on some other protein source, I think it would have been extremely difficult. So.
What's the vegan protein that you use? The protein powder?
I order from TrueNutrition.com. I'm not paid by them to say that. I've used their protein for a long time. So they have any protein you want. I mean, they have the regular whey, any protein you want, but they do have specific vegan blends, and you can make your own there. So it's kind of nice. You can flip a category and say, I only want to look at vegan proteins, and you can put whatever you want in. So like mine is a mix. I've been ordering there for 5 years, probably more than this at this point. But mine's a mixture of pea protein, rice protein, and hemp protein. So again, you can make whatever mix you want, like down to like the percentile, or they have some that are already made. So, and then whatever flavor you want. All of their flavors, I think, now are vegan, or if not all, a good portion of them are vegan. So. So I'll always use them as long as they're around. And they, I did my research on them. They're a highly rated protein. They're not one of the weird ones out there that just throw random stuff in their protein.
Yeah. Well, because it's so hard to find a good protein powder. And not only that, I mean, I would prefer to use a plant-based protein powder, but I think they all taste like grainy butthole. So I'm like finding one that's like not grainy and it also tastes good. Yeah. That's why I wanted to ask, because I'm sure, then it's so hard to do trials because it's not cheap to buy this stuff. So you're like, oh, I want to try this. And if you buy a whole tub of it and you're like, ugh, then there's like, well, there went $60.
Well, and the thing too is a lot of it's so expensive, especially vegan protein. Like there's the, what's the brand? Is it Vega protein?
Yeah, I don't like that one personally.
One, it tastes like not good. It just tastes so fake. Other thing is like the amount you get, cost-wise per serving is like ridiculous. I'm like, no. Is True Nutrition the cheapest? It's not. I'm not gonna lie, but it's the overall best value I've had in terms of taste and getting what you want. So, yeah, I've tried all sorts of kind. I've tried. I'd have to go back and see like what I've ordered, but I remember, even as a vegetarian, I was trying different proteins, and especially as a vegan. And but once I found this, I kind of stuck to it. There's probably more options out there now. I don't research them anymore now that I found one. But now that vegans starting to be a little bit more mainstream, the options are probably a little better than they were 5 years ago.
Yeah. So if anybody has any questions for you specifically, would you be cool with sharing your email address and if anybody and answering some questions if anybody has any?
Yeah, absolutely.
What's your email address?
Email address is zachcrawford@gmail.com. So ZACHCRAWFORD.
All right, I will share that in the show notes. And thank you so much for sharing. I think that it's so interesting, and obviously the fact that you've been living this lifestyle for so long shows that you're passionate about it and you're able to use it to how you need it to grow your own body and hit your own goals. And I think that there's so much. I think one of the reasons I was asked this question, because there is this. You thought of like, especially if you're lifting heavy and you're growing muscle, like you need to feed that with protein, and it is difficult to do that plant-based. So to see that, you're living proof of somebody who has figured that out and found your own methods and even switched from vegetarian to vegan, I think is probably super hopeful for a lot of people that are interested in making this lifestyle choice, but have some reservations to hear like a real person and not just a random one-off documentary on somebody that had all of these resources at their fingertips of like, no, you're an average person that was able to figure this out and live this life. And I think that's awesome.
Yep.
So thank you so much for sharing. And I'll see you at Zeb's wedding probably.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Thanks, Zach.
Yep. You're welcome.
AmandaValentineBites.com